Picked a fine time to leave me loose wheel. Hadn't heard that in a few years.
That probably was the best Dover race that I can remember in a long time. For me personally, it was my favorite Dover race since probably the COT era. So what made this race so good? In my opinion, it was a good race, really good, but at the same time, there were some things that were off. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But getting right into my thoughts directly after the race, right now Chase Elliott is doing burnouts. I got to say that I love the fact that you really almost had three different races play out. You had the Sunday race, you had the first half of the Monday race until all the cautions came out, and then you had that last run at the end, which is very classic Dover. The Sunday race was very fast-paced, and that's something that I noticed that was way different than years past. Usually at Dover, TV does not get the fast pace that you get at the track. And because of that, you see a lot of these races seeming very, very slow. And I think a lot of that had to do with atmosphere. The crowd itself was really large. And I want to say, as an aside, this really shows that optics are everything. You see, Dover used to have 140,000 seats. Nowadays, they've downsized to 54,000. But on Sunday, it looked about as full as a classic Gen 4 Dover race. Now, I will say, it sucks that they didn't get the race in on Sunday fully for these fans, as I'm going to be real here. I know it's sort of a meme to say noon, but when you have a track that doesn't have lights in an area of the country where it tends to rain in the spring like it does in Dover, I think that earlier starts are much, much more needed. Honestly, should be elevated to a higher status. Now, on Sunday, it was the Hendrick cars and the Gibbs cars who dominated for the majority of the day. While rain really took it out for the most part, Denny Hamlin seemed to have the race in hand early on. Then, of course, we go to the Monday portion of the race. Monday immediately just struck off as a more wild edition of this race. You started with Austin Cindric hitting the wall and Ryan Blaney turning Todd Gilliland as a response to that crash. Cindric ending up in last, Gilliland and Blaney continuing on through the day, but overall, it was not a good day for Ford. Then, of course, you had in Stage 1, Denny Hamlin versus Chase Elliott for the Stage 1 win, with Hamlin prevailing, but that is where one of the primary detriments of this race came into effect, and it came into effect for the rest of the day, and that is dirty air. Yes, this race was a much bigger improvement than probably any of us expected for Dover, and it was a very good race, but it was not perfect. There still are some things that will always be in effect at tracks like Dover, and aerodynamics is always going to be one of those things. So bad air and dirty air really prevented a lot of faster cars from making their way up through the early parts of runs. I'd say the first 10 to 20, sometimes even 30 laps of runs, these faster cars who had newer tires would be held up by cars with older tires just because they had the clean air. But Denny Hamlin did manage to get by Chase Elliott, and he won the stage. And that's pretty much where the good ends for Denny Hamlin, as the poor guy had a wheel come off coming out of pit road and then got all the way back up to fourth before getting taken out in a classic Cody Ware incident where he just basically lost it and then didn't lock down the tires coming back down the track. Not a good look for Ware whatsoever, and it really ruined Hamlin's day. Now, in Stage 2 and throughout the day, it got from a more dreary, overcast day to sunny out, and I think that threw the teams a bit for a loop. And I think it did change the way the tires would really get into the track and wear down throughout the run. Now, guys like Larson had a flat, as well as others, and there were different crashes for guys like Kurt Busch and Joey Logano. Most of Stage 2 was actually pretty wild overall, and it really was a lot of racing incidents and just the fact that the teams were getting aggressive with this current tire. Tyler Reddick had a flat, Ty Dillon had a flat, and then, of course, you have everything else that happened. At the end, though, Ryan Blaney proved how clean air is so important, as he beat Kyle Busch, who had fresher tires and a better car, because the 12 car had clean air. And it's not like Blaney was that good the rest of the day. I believe he was in the mid-20s and finished a lap or two down, if I'm correct. But then you get to the end of the race and the final stage, and honestly, this one continued the craziness at first that stage 2 had. You had the caution for a tire in the track in the middle of a green flag run from AJ Allmendinger. This caught Bowman and Kyle Busch a lap down. Both of those guys really had the best cars all day, and they were never able to recover. Bowman got a 5th place finish on the day. Kyle Busch got 7th. And then you had the incident between Daniel Suarez and Corey LaJoie where they got into each other, causing a yellow. And I felt horrible for LaJoie here because that 7 car was probably the best non-super speedway car that Spire has ever put out. That car was easily a top 10 caliber car before getting into Suarez, or really Suarez getting into him. Then you had a really great battle between Chase Elliott and Ross Chastain where they're going side by side, and unfortunately it got cut short because Tyler Reddick crashed in the back. Reddick has just been having such a crazy year in the sense that he cannot have anything go right whatsoever. He has fast cars every week, seems to lead tons of laps, but for some reason that team, that 8 team, can just never ever close it out. Anyway, that pretty much set up the last long green flag run of the day, where Dirty Air mired the faster cars in the back, guys like Alex Bowman and Kyle Busch getting stuck behind much slower cars. And they were stuck there for 20 or 30 laps, and by the time they were able to start passing cars as their tires came in better, well, at that point, then they were 5 to 8 seconds back. This, again, is classic Dover. It's something that happened in the Gen 6 era, COT era, as well as the Gen 4 on back. It's just something that happens with this big concrete track. Anyway, Chase Elliott would go on to win, and it's his first win since Road America last year, and his first oval win since 2020 when he won the championship at Phoenix. So it's been a while, but he now locks himself in the final Hendrick car to get into the playoffs. And it's really good as Elliott, while leading the points, has seemed off this year just because that team cannot get it right no matter what they do. So it's good to see that the 9 team, as they start getting into the start of the dog days of summer, is really starting to come to life. And maybe towards the end of the year might be a viable championship contender like we all expect him to be. But I don't want to talk too much more about Elliott. He did very good, and that's great and all. What I want to talk about are really 3 different drivers. First off, attaboy to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Stenhouse has been abysmal this year. Coming into this race, he was 31st in the points. His best finish was in the 20s. He had been running like garbage, even for that 47 car. But they came in here today, ran top 10 early in the race, top 5 through the second half of the race, and hey, if Elliott catches some bad traffic, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. could have snuck away with a win in this one. And then we talk about Truex and Chastain. Chastain and Truex got into each other racing hard in the last couple laps, and then on the last lap, Chastain and Truex made some contact, resulting in Truex spinning into the inside wall, causing a caution, and unofficially finishing 12th as of right now. I'm going to say I don't think anything's going to come of this. Truex is always proven to be a driver that has no bite to his bark, and he might say all he wants about Chastain, but he's probably not going to do anything. Now, watch as I say this, he'll probably repeat his former teammate in Matt Kenseth and crash Ross Chastain later this year. But anyway, overall, I think that it was an absolutely good race. Not a great race, a good race. Dirty air is still prevalent at Dover, but it is a vast improvement over, in my opinion, the last 2 generations of race cars at this track. Now, I want to pass it to you. What did you think of the race at Dover today? Did you think it was as good as I thought it was? Do you think it was great? Or do you think I'm wrong and it was a bad race? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Vote on my poll on the channel as, well, it's always fun to voice your displeasures or pleasures wherever you're at. And to all my channel members, thank you so much for all of your support. And until next time, have a good one.